Hello everyone, welcome to Tutorials by Decade. My name is Decade, and today we are going to work on transitions. I am going to break this up into at least 2 videos. This may even take 3 videos, depending on how long some of these videos take to record. But before we get into it, as always, if you like these videos, make sure you give them the big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, as subscribing will allow you to see all of the videos that I come out with, and I have a video coming out at least once a week, and I don't want you to miss anything. So please subscribe, and it does help me out as well. With all of that out of the way, let's get to it. So in this video, I'm going to work on mainly just the scripts. And then the next video we'll work on putting everything together and then testing it out. So with that, the very first thing we're going to do is open up our room script. We're going to make some changes from the last video. So what we need to do is we need to go up here, and we are going to add using unity.SceneMachine. And then down here where it says room objects, the room's camera, what we're going to do is we're going to change that from a game object to the actual camera itself. So SceneMachine camera. Then we're going to add one more thing down here. We're going to do a tooltip and the tag of the player. And then we're going to do a serialized field. And then we're going to do a string target tag equals player. So what we're doing, we're going to be changing the way the camera functions a little bit in order to do transitions properly and follow the player whenever you transition from one scene to another. We're going to need to be able to retarget the player essentially, and the way we had it before, it would not retarget the player. So all these things that say room camera.setActive, what we're going to have to do is change it to room camera.enabled and then false or true. So for this one, we're going to do false. But while we're here in start, we're going to do another thing here. We're going to do game object target equals game object dot find with tag and then target tag. And then if the starting room, we're going to do room camera dot follow equals target dot transform. So this will automatically get the follow. That way, if we leave the scene and come back, it'll automatically grab the player, and then we'll go from there. So that also means we need to do that on the trigger enter 2D. So game object target equals game object dot find with tag target tag. Ignore all that other stuff there. And then down here, we're going to do room camera. Oh. Room camera enabled equals true. And then room camera dot follow, or foo apparently. There we go. Follow equals target dot transform. And then the only thing we need to do down here in the exit 2D is just change that to enabled equals false. And as a safety precaution, we're going to do room camera dot follow equals null. I'm pausing the video here real fast. Give me one moment. Sorry about that. I am dog sitting right now, and the dog's going a little crazy. But anyway, that is all we need to do for the room script. Now, once we do all of that, the camera will automatically pick up the player as a target and follow the player around. That way we don't have to worry about doing anything crazy a little bit later. So now that that is out of the way, what we're going to do is work on a few other scripts. So the first script that we're going to work on is what's called a SpawnPoint, the SpawnPoint script. So in world, we're just going to right click, go to create, monobehavior script, and then SpawnPoint, ignore my dog. Sorry about that. Anyway, so with SpawnPoint, we are not doing much of anything in here. All we're really doing is putting a name to this. So tooltip, unique ID used in SceneTransitionTrigger to place player here. So SceneTransitionTrigger we're going to be working on here very shortly. This is a public, so we don't need serialized, but public string spawn ID. Then we'll default that entrance for now. So that's the first script. Now that that one's out of the way, let's work on the next one. What is the next one? Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. And we are going to do the SpawnManager. So we're going to right click, create, monobehavior script, and SceneSpawnManager. So once this does its thing, we'll load this up. We're going to use up here using Unity Engine.SceneManagement. Then what we're going to do is we are going to put a little note here set by SceneTransitionTrigger before loading a scene. And then we're going to do a public static string next spawn ID. And then in here, we're going to do a private void on enable. And all we're going to do is SceneManager dot scene loaded plus equals on scene loaded. And that's going to give you an error because we haven't created that on scene loaded yet, but we're going to here very shortly. Then we need to do the same thing, but private void on disable. And essentially we're just going to copy this, paste that there, and then just change the plus to a negative. So if this ever happens, where it's like, as you type it overwrites, down here, hold on. Well, it used to be down here where you can just change it. How do I do that now? Give me one moment to look this up. Okay, so see where it's like it's highlighting the letter here, and if I were to type an A, it puts an A instead of like inserting an A. A real simple fix on your keyboard, you should have an insert button, INS. If you click on that, you'll notice down here that override thing went away. So if I click it again, OVR means that you're just overriding everything that you type. And if you hit insert, that goes away, and now I can insert letters instead. So that's how we fixed that little issue. You used to be able to just click down here and change that, but with updates and all that, yeah. So anyway, now that that is out of the way, let's create that on scene loaded. So we're going to do private void on scene loaded, and we're going to require a scene called scene and a load scene mode called mode. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to check to see if the next spawn ID is empty. If it is, we're not going to do anything. So we're going to do if string dot is null or empty, and then it's already trying to fill this in for me, so I'm just going to hit tab. But next spawn ID, ignore my phone. Then we are going to just return. Otherwise, we're going to do all this fun stuff here. So we're going to do SpawnPoint. We're going to create a list of them, call them spawns, equals find objects by type SpawnPoint. And then in here, we're going to do find objects sort mode to none. And then I don't think we've done a for each loop, but essentially a for each loop is going to go through and it's going to continuously go through everything until you either break it yourself or until it goes through the entire list. So I'll explain it more as we go along here, but we're going to do for each var sp in spawns. So essentially, it's going to look for all of whatever's in this list. And then it's going to do everything in this code that we're about to do for each thing in that list until we tell it to stop or until it goes through everything. So we're going to do if sp dot spawn ID equals the next spawn ID. So in other words, if whatever item in that list is the item we're looking for, we're going to do some stuff. We're going to do player dot, oh, sorry, I got ahead of myself here. We first need to do this. So we're going to move the player. And then var player equals game object dot find game object with tag. And then the tag is going to be player. Now, assuming we found the player, so we're going to do if player is not null, then we're going to do some more stuff. We are actually going to move that player by doing player.transform.position to sp.transform.position. So essentially, we're just going to move the player. Why is this giving me an error here? Oh, because I forgot 2 equals. There we go. Now this part we're going to do here is it's optional. So we're actually going to do that here. It's optional. 0 out residual velocity. So if the player is moving whenever the player hits this, we're going to automatically stop the player. So we're going to do var rb equals player dot get component rigid body 2D. And then if rigid body not equals null, ignore my phone, we're going to do rb.linear velocity equals vector2 dot 0. Once we do all of that, we are going to go in between. We're going to count 3 little brackets here, and then we're going to hit enter. And then we're just going to put break. So that means we found what we're looking for. So we're going to break this loop. And then just to make sure that nothing goes too crazy. Hold on, let me make sure I put that break in. Should be under the if. Okay, yeah. Perfect. All right, and just to make sure we don't go too crazy here, we're going to things just looked weird from my notes. Yeah, we're going to go right here. And then we're just going to do a next spawn ID equals null. So we're clearing out the next spawn ID just so that way no crazy things happen later down the road. But that's all we need for the spawn manager. So now we need the scene transition trigger, which we've already referenced kind of twice already. So we're just going to create that now. So create mono behavior script and scene transition trigger. Then once Unity's done doing its thing, we're going to open it up and we're going to create it. So for here, we are going to be using Unity engine.SceneManagement. And I'm going to pause the video here one more time. All right, sorry about all the weird cuts and everything. It's been a very weird and distracting day. Anyway, let's get working on this here. So there's a few things that we're going to do here. This is going to be the script where the player actually, when the player collides with it, it'll transition to a new scene. So first we want to do a header and then put destination. Ignore my phone. This is what I mean. That's from my wife, so I better check this one. So I'm going to pause this again. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back again. Anyway, so we have the header, destination, and then we're going to put a tooltip here. And it's going to say name of the scene to load. And the scene must be added in build settings. So I will show you how to do that in the next video if you don't already know how to do that. So for now, we're just going to, again, focus on the scripts. Serialize the field. And private string target scene name. And then another tooltip here. SpawnPoint dot spawn ID in the destination scene. Serialize that field, and then private string destination spawn ID. And then header optional use scene loader instead of direct scene manager. So what this is here, one of the first videos we did a couple scripts to try to get ahead of the game. And one of those scripts was a scene loader. But I don't think we're going to use it. But just in case we're putting this in here. So I'm just going to put a little note there. Essentially, we could use the scene loader. The scene loader was one of the first scripts we made. All it does is just load a scene. But a large majority of the time, we're just going to be loading the scene anyway using this script and with this little system that we're creating. So there's really no need to use that scene loader. So again, I have this in here just in case, but we're likely not going to use it. All right, now here we're going to do a private void reset. And then these are just some helpful defaults. So the var collision, get component, collider 2D. And then collider is trigger equals true. Now here's where the actual fun begins. So we're going to do private void on trigger enter 2D. And again, I like to change this to other. It's not necessary as long as you know what it is. So if the other is not the player, essentially, then we're just going to return. We're not going to do anything. So later on when we add enemies and things like that, we don't want the enemies to accidentally trigger a scene transition. So here we're going to do SceneSpawnManager dot next spawn ID equals destination spawn ID. So that line of code right there is what actually moves the player to the new location, the new scene. If the scene loader is not null, meaning there is a scene loader, then we're going to use existing scene loader, which is a synchronous load. Then scene loader dot load scene target scene name. Else, we're just going to do load directly using scene manager. Oh, forgot the little colon there at the end. We're going to do scene manager dot load scene async. Now, there is a difference between load scene and load scene async. I'll go over that here in a little bit, but that's all we need to do here. And then there's one more that we need to do that we're going to expand on a little bit later, but actually we don't even need to expand on it. But we do need to do this. We're going to go to players. We're going to go to create mono behavior script, and then we are going to do player persistence. And then we're going to open up this screen. And we are going to make the player persistent. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a private static player persistence and instance. And then we're going to do a private void awake. And then if instance not equals null and instance not equal this. What we're going to do is we're going to prevent duplicates by destroying, not debug, destroying the game object and then returning and not doing anything. Else, if instance is null, but essentially if there is no instance, what we're going to do, or if this is the instance, we're going to make the instance equal this, and then don't destroy on load game object. And then lastly, we're going to do private void on destroy, and then if instance equals this, then instance is going to equal null. Ignore that real fast. Sorry, so many distractions today. Anyway, that is all we need to do for the coding portion of this. All right. Sorry about the dead air there. I'm trying to find a good way to describe load scene versus load scene async. Okay. So the best way to describe, let's go back to the thing here. So by loading a scene, normally by synchronous load versus an async load. A synchronous load means that the game freezes, and everything freezes as everything loads. Whereas an async load, it loads in the background and nothing freezes. So you want to use an async load because you can add then at that point a loading screen, or you can add some sort of transition between the scenes, whereas load scene will freeze and not do anything until everything is loaded, and then it will continue. The downside to it is it can completely, or the downside to regular load scene is it can completely freeze. If something for whatever reason doesn't load right, or if something goes wrong, the game will freeze and Control-Alt-Delete at that point. Whereas async, if something goes wrong, the game will still load. It may load a little weird, but at least you can save your game, or maybe reload the game without having to completely close the game out and go from there. So for a game like this, it doesn't really matter too much, but if you're going to make a really deep, involved game, it is better to do the async versus regular load. But now that that's out of the way, let me explain everything we just did. And again, in the next video, we're actually going to put this to practice. So the first thing we did is we went to our rooms and we changed the camera to a SceneMachine camera, and then we set up a string so that way in our code here and the following code, the camera will automatically find the player and target and follow the player. That way we don't have to worry about transitions messing things up or anything like that. This is just a spawn point. That's all it is, and we just wanted to put a spawn ID on there so that way we can figure out where we're supposed to spawn. There's no code in here whatsoever, but it is a very, very important piece of this. The scene transition trigger is what actually transitions the player from one scene to another. We're going to set up a point where if the player walks into it or does a certain thing, it's going to trigger the scene transition, and then we are going to change scenes. The SceneSpawnManager is what's going to actually save all of our spawn points. And then it's going to send the correct spawn point to the scene transition trigger whenever the player activates that. And then player persistence. Now, I talked about this whenever we made our game manager, because we essentially did the exact same thing here in the game manager. But what persistence is something that is the same between all of your scenes. So if you don't have persistence, what you would have to do is each scene you would essentially have to rebuild your player. And if you have stats like health, money, magic, or if you get like a more in-depth game where there's other stats involved, you would have to do a lot of work to send all that information from one scene to another. Whereas if you keep persistence and you don't destroy on load, then whenever the player transitions scenes, they keep everything that they already have. They keep, whatever currency they have. They keep whatever health they have. They keep whatever magic, whatever other stats they have. They keep all of that. And it's just so much easier to do a couple lines of code than to have an entire script dedicated to sending your stats from one scene to another. For a single player game like the one that we're working on, might not be that much of a hassle, but if you make a multiplayer game or you make a game similar to like a JRPG like Final Fantasy or something like that where you have multiple characters you need to keep track of, well then that's when things can get really hectic. So it's just easier to do a singleton is what this is called, but persistence, where everything stays the same when you're jumping from scene to scene. So that's what we did there. So now that all of this code is done, before I end this video, I have a little bit of a challenge for you all. In order to do a scene transition, we obviously need a second scene. So if you're set up the same way I'm set up, I want you to go to Scenes. I want you to right click. I want you to go to Create. I want you to go to Scenes. There they are. Scene, and then just name this one Test House. If you have a little asterisk up here next to Test Scene, you want to hit Control S or Command S to save. And then you want to double click on Test House, and there's not going to be anything here. My challenge to you is to get this scene set up. A little bit of a hint, you're going to need obviously a grid. You're going to need to build a small little interior of a house. You're going to need to add a camera. And honestly, that should be all you need to add. But for the next video, you're going to need a scene, or else we can't do this. So once you're done with that, in the comments below, let me know what you did. Let me know if there's anything that you're missing. Let me know if you think everything's good to go. And then in our next video, we will actually work with that scene and actually transition the player from our normal test scene to the new scene that you create. But for now, I'm going to leave the video here. As always, make sure you give it the big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, as I have videos like this coming out all the time, and I don't want you to miss anything. And with that out of the way, thank you. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.